Good morning and welcome on board Safari Live this morning. We've got good news. There has been a new addition given birth to last night into this wildebeest herd, and there are now not one but two tiny little calves, and we're just waiting for the bull of this herd to escort his harem of ladies into this open clearing, and it's been quite fascinating watching him kind of clear the path and make sure that there's no possible threats ahead of the herd, the ladies with their young little calves, which you are about to see. VM actually said, who's on camera with me this morning, said, let's go and spend some time with these wildebeest and hopefully we'll get to film one of them giving birth. So that's our plans initially this morning. It's a bit cloudy and there is a chance of rain. I don't think it's going to be the biggest downpour, but even if it starts drizzling, that may become problematic for us. My name's Scott, if you haven't met before, and let's move forward a little bit. The rest of the herd is on their way. I just wanted to clear out of their way a little bit initially because I think they thought that we were looking at some lion here, so they were a bit hesitant of joining us in this little open clearing. We've got James out in the other vehicle and Nikki and Kirsty in the final control room. And good morning to Julia. And thank you for sending in a question so quickly. You want to know if it rained last night. Not that I'm aware of, Julia. I don't think we got any precipitation last night, but it certainly looks like we could get some this morning, like I said. So this is the mighty bull who's been making sure his ladies are escorted safely into this big open clearing. Now you can see the very large belly of a female who has yet to give birth to her calf this season. And maybe she will provide us with our first wildebeest birth on camera. Last year we were lucky enough to film 5 different wildebeest births, one of which was on my very first drive here at Safari Live. There was such a wonderful call you may have heard faintly there, the call of a zebra. There's my little impersonation, one of my favorite calls and not one that you hear very often. Now that can be a bit of an alarm call, so we'll keep that in mind. Maybe it was just 2 zebras having a conversation, or zebra will let that call out if they are being chased by a lion. Now, Brent saw the first wildebeest calf yesterday afternoon, and he said he did spend time with this herd yesterday morning, and there was no calves around. So, one calf was born between drives yesterday, another one was born between drives last night, and we've laid eyes on it just a few moments ago, and we are hoping that we'll be able to introduce you to both of these youngsters very soon. Ooh, VM spotted a little wound there. Interesting. Let me get out my binoculars and see if I can work out what's happened there. All spotted, VM. And I'm sure a lot of you may have even spotted that wound before I did. Oh, hard to say what that could be from. I think it may have maybe just run into a branch or something like that. Although at this time of the year, some strange things are happening, and that's because we are experiencing a drought. And just yesterday, a buffalo bull charged the tiny little quarantine clearings. We started out. And we just had a comment through from Steph saying that some of these wildebeest certainly do look ready to pop, and you're entirely correct, Steph. So they are currently in the process of popping, and we are hoping that one will pop for us this morning. Wouldn't that be great? This is a young wildebeest from last year. You can see it's got a kind of slightly paler forehead, so that's why it is not pregnant. It's also not quite as big. All three of them there, little teenagers. So last year's additions to the herd. Now, Alyssa's wondering if wildebeest have the possibility of giving birth to twins, and yes, they do. All of the animals out here do have the possibility of giving birth to twins, but it doesn't happen hugely frequently, and twins are a rarity, but it can happen from time to time. Like a lot of what goes on out here, Alyssa, sadly a lot of the time we actually aren't aware of what's what, and even though very often you may find animals giving birth to twins, we may not necessarily know that that is the case. But who knows, maybe this morning we will film our first wildebeest birth where two twins are involved. That would be wonderful. Now, I'm sure it's not going to be too long before these two tiny little calves arrive. They are light brown and beautiful to watch running around. So let's go and see if we can find them further behind here with their mothers. And hello to Chris Rogue, one of our regular viewers, and she's mentioned that she's hoping that VM is the lucky cameraman who gets to film. The first wildebeest. So thanks for that, Chris. I'm sure VM is very happy that you are rooting for him. To Kathleen, who's interested to know when would the wildebeest have been mating, and therefore how long is their gestation period if they're giving birth now. And Kathleen, I'm not sure of the exact amount of days. Maybe one of you can double check me, but I'm sure it's around probably 240 days to 270 days. Our guess is you'll probably average time. But I'm not too sure offhand of the exact gestation period, so if any of you do know that, please feel free to share it with us. It is a live safari and a good learning experience for all. Now, I have been concentrating after I got stumped by Kathleen's question, and I think I may have driven the wrong way. So let's go back. I did get a glimpse of these wildebeest with the calves up ahead, but my route planning was very sound. Reassess my game plan here. But Kathleen, usually it's about 6 months. So 6 months, sometimes slightly longer than that. That's why I said up to 240 days. But basically towards the end of summer or beginning of our winter, wildebeest and a lot of the other herbivores will start to mate, and then roughly 6 months later they tend to give birth in time for what is supposed to be the summer bounty, which is certainly not the case this year because of the drought conditions. But certainly more food going around than there is in the winter months when it's very, very dry and dusty. Okay, good news everyone. We have finally caught up with the rest of the herd, or the rest of the herd has caught up with that initial portion that we were viewing, and we are in for some good views of the young calves. Let me just get into a spot. They seem to be following the bull who's clearing the pathway up ahead. And if we wait here, we should have them all streaming past us. This is going to be awesome. I'm not too sure which of the calves was born yesterday and which was the one born last night. But here's one of them. Look at how cute that is. You can see the umbilical cord sticking out there still. Oh, and this is what I was hoping for. They are so energetic and playful, and to watch them bounce around like this is so cool. Isn't it phenomenal how quickly they learn to walk? I mean, that is within hours of being on the planet, and if you think how long it takes us to get onto our 2 feet and moving around, I guess a lot of respect should be given to these animals. Now the second calf is just in front of us now. Which one looks older or younger? Now, I think this is the most recently born one. Look at how cute this is. Its mother's quite rough with it, but I mean, that's part of growing up in the wild. But this one, to me, looks a little bit more shaky on its legs, and its coat even looks a little bit more wet than the other one. So I think this is the newest addition to the herd. Okay, well, we've just got a question through from 2 twins. I know Alyssa was asking about twins earlier. This is Andrew and Michael, and they're watching with Barbara. And they would like to know what will happen when the wildebeest give birth. Will they do it out in the open? Do they lie down? And the only time I've seen it, which is once in my life, on my first ever WildEarth drive, the female was standing up for quite a lot of the time, but then did lie down right at the end for the final push. And she did it out in the open in the quarantine clearing. So basically, Andrew and Michael and Barbara, it could very well happen in a setting very similar to where we are now. The female, though, that I saw was standing up for a portion of the labor, but then right at the end, like I said, she lay down for the final little push, and then out popped the tiny calf. Great, I want to try and just loop ahead of them one more time, because I fear they may go into some thick bush shortly, so we'll get one more guaranteed view, and then we'll leave them, as like I said, they're probably moving into another area, an open area, again being met by the stallion. Sorry, we still got VM, camera's still on, good. To Roger, and Roger's asked a good question. We'd like to know how many wildebeest on average will survive to adulthood, and I would guess probably about 30% would make it to adulthood, but it'll depend hugely on the luck of each individual herd. What we can do in this case is count how many youngsters remain and how many adults are in the herd, and that way we should be able to get an idea of how many of the calves survived from last summer. So I'm just going to do this quickly. Well, let's see, here's one light-headed one in the center of the screen. So that's last year's produce. We've seen 3 so far guaranteed with these light foreheads. So if it's definitely 3 teenagers, I think it is only 3, possibly 4 with straight horns, and there's probably about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's about 12 adults that I can see. Look, the young calves nursing. Awesome. I was too busy counting, I may have missed a beat there, but like I said, it looks like there could be 12 adult wildebeest cheer females and about 4 of last year's offspring. At a guess, 30%. 33% of last year's young have made it through, Roger, according to my rough calculations here. Hello to Love 3 Dogs, a very interesting name you have, and you are spot on with your observations, saying that it's wonderful to see how closely these young calves are following their mothers, and I guess they need to follow them very closely, especially for the first few moments of their life. Oh, this is cool. There's some wattled starlings arriving. Now, these are migratory birds. They just flew in amongst the wildebeest there and landed on the ground. And as VM zooms in, you'll see a few small birds moving about. They've got bright yellow wattles on their heads. Look at that. You can see the one male there. The males have got the bright head rest. Oh, look, and the little calf's lying down. There's the starling in the foreground on the right. So the males have got the bright heads, the females have got the dull heads. And isn't it cute, that little calf taking a breather? Now, these wattled starlings are not here throughout the year. We don't see them throughout the year. And you'll see that bright, pretty yellow breeding plumage on the head of the males, and it's common for them to follow herds like this, trying to feed on insects that the herbivores flush up as they graze through the veldt. And more are coming in. Look at all of them. Awesome. Now, I didn't explain myself very clearly earlier, so I'm very happy that Gail has sent through an email to questions@wildearth.tv, and she's mentioned, what use is it that the male is heading up ahead of the rest of the herd? Because how is he going to defend them against lion or leopard? And Gail, he's probably not going to defend them against lion or leopard. It's almost like a kind of a self-sacrifice that he's making by being the first one up ahead. He would be the first one to run into trouble, possibly detect trouble. I mean, the ladies are preoccupied, either about to give birth or having just given birth, so their minds aren't as focused possibly as his can be on looking for predators. But like I said, I think it's almost like a self-sacrifice. He goes ahead first. If anything happens, it'll happen to him and not the rest of the herd. Wildebeest will chase certain animals, as will zebra, so there's certain herbivores that will chase animals like leopard and jackal, but lion certainly would not put up any, well, wildebeest would not put up any resistance to lion, and they would run off in the opposite direction as soon as they caught wind of them. Cool. It looks like the herd has relaxed, and it doesn't look like we are in luck with seeing a birth this morning, but maybe we'll pop in and visit them a little bit later. And VM and I are going to start now spreading out on our search to see if there are any predators on the property that may have snuck in last night. And as we head off, you're also going to be heading off and joining James for an update on his vehicle.
Good morning, everybody. Well, you've been welcomed by Scott, and you now know what you're doing if you happen to be a new viewer. My name is James. On camera we have Brian. Hello, Brian. And we've just been to try and see if the hyenas are at their den. They are not. This is very distressing. It is a cloudy and slightly soporific day, tinged with a bit of sadness because old Tara is leaving us. And so we are, we move on into the future, forging ahead. But there is a little tinge of sadness in the air. Nice to have the birth of the little wildebeest. I saw one on foot yesterday. It wasn't particularly pleased to see me at all. Our plan this morning was to drive around this without the sun sort of giving you a bit of an angle on the ground. It becomes quite difficult to see some of the tracks. Anyway, we're going to keep looking around here, and then I will go towards, then we'll head towards the WildEarth Dam and see if she hasn't popped around there. That's where she was hunting last night. And James Taylor, the original James Taylor, perhaps? I wonder if you wanted to know if she's caught anything yet, or you're wondering if she has caught anything. Well, we haven't seen any evidence thereof, but certainly looking around and hoping that she may have nabbed herself an impala or maybe two babies. This is a real bonus time, and as I'm sure Scott told you, for the predators, because when the herbivores are giving birth, it's pretty easy for them to feed. So that's the general plan today.
Morning, Mobile Station.
Sorry, Virginia, I believe there's a question from you. I just had the radio exploding in my ear. Something about impala families. It'll come back through again now. A dik-dik. Virginia, you want to know if a dik-dik is part of the impala family. Virginia, there's nothing else in the impala family. They're in a family all on their own. And so they're in the same order, which is the taxonomic group above family, as the impala, but they're not the same family at all. Impala are the only members of their family, and they've remained sort of unchanged, apparently for about, 1.5 million years. Their fossil record, or their anatomy has not changed as a result of evolutionary pressure. There's such a successful design. So, Virginia, the dik-dik is not in the impala family. It's, I think it's in the Steenbok's family. And if it isn't, it's very closely related to the Steenbok's family. But we don't get them here. So for those of you who don't know, everybody, a dik-dik is a tiny little antelope, sort of the size of a Steenbok, maybe a little bit smaller even. And they're found more in the desert. These are, of course, not dik-diks. They are nyala. A little mother, I think, off to the right-hand side, and then a young male and a lamb. It's a very beautifully quiet and peaceful morning. You would have heard the Diederik's cuckoo going there. And all around, often when you stop, you can hear the kind of bleating or not bleating, the kind of strident calling of chicks in nests. I don't often find the nests. Well, Scott does, but I seem to be unable to find them. But I can hear some in a dead tree behind us. So those nyala will be spending as much time as they can in the thick bush, eating the delicious vegetation, the new stuff, and then they'll go and have some waters. Have yourself. Now, we had Big Cat Week last week, and part of Big Cat Week, of course, was the Safari Bingo. And Liz W. in San Diego, you were the winner. And you say that you were tremendously excited about going off to Tanzania, and you say you'll probably go in August next year. Liz, I think that sounds like a wonderful time to go there, and I believe this is going to be your first trip to Africa, if not out of the United States. So that's extremely exciting for you, and I must say I'm pretty jealous. I've never seen the wildebeest streaming across the plains. I've seen the 8 wildebeest streaming across quarantine clearings, but I haven't seen the 2 million that you're going to go and see streaming across the plains of the mighty Serengeti. So I'm very jealous of you. But I hope you have the most wonderful time, and I'm sure you will. Now, yesterday we had a situation where the buffalo, excuse me, where a buffalo bashed one of the little wildebeest calves, And Nicole, you want to know if that's because perhaps there's drought and so the animals are more aggressive than they might be otherwise at this time of the year. Nicole, they will get more protective over the water, certainly, but it's not unusual for adult animals of other species to have a go at youngsters from other species, simply because the youngsters, if they're around and bleating and making a noise, attract predators. And so often you'll find zebra, if zebra will attack baby wildebeest if they're not very well protected by their parents. And in the same way, I think that's probably why that buffalo gave the young wildebeest a bit of a knock yesterday, basically saying, get out of here, and we don't want you to be around us attracting predators. So I think that's probably got something to do with it. I'm not convinced that it had too much to do with the water stress. But that said, certainly around that little pan there will start to be increasing competition as it dries out. And I mean, although there's a whole lot of cloud above us today, I don't think we're going to get any rain. Brian, do you think we're going to get rain?
Probably not.
Probably not. So it is very thick cloud, but one or two little drips of rain, not much. And just still on the subject of the dryness and the drought, Nicole, you want to know if it affects mating. Not for the antelope. Remember, the antelope and the buffalo and most of the animals will try and time it so that their babies are born round about now and into December. And so the mating will take place obviously a long time before this. In the case of the impala, will take place around May. In the case of the wildebeest, a little bit earlier than that. And the zebras around January time. And I mean, only the impala really time it to perfection like they do. But certainly the wildebeest are not far off. And the things like zebra and giraffe and other animals like that will mate and try and have their babies around this time. So it doesn't really affect mating for the antelope. Here's some tracks. No, there's a hyena. In terms of the carnivores, they tend to be very unseasonal in their breeding, except the wild dogs, so it won't really affect them. What it might affect is birds. Now, birds, of course, do a lot of mating, sometimes before the wet season, sometimes during the wet season. And I suspect it might push some of the mating behavior for the birds out, but I'm not really sure. I think it will have far more effect on how many young survive. Young will definitely struggle in a drought, but perhaps not so much the mating. Very, very interesting consideration coming through here from Rolf. Rolf? Sorry, I'm just looking at a bird flying overhead. It wasn't particularly impressive, so we won't ask Brian to make you nauseous by flinging the camera at it. Rolf, you want to know if predators will pay more attention to pregnant antelope or pregnant herbivores? Yeah, I think they will. Absolutely. I think that there's definitely a knowledge of which animals are pregnant and which aren't. I think that there's probably a pheromonal scent that they can pick up, and certainly I think a heavily pregnant female would be targeted by a predator because they're slower and they're obviously more of a meal. So yes, Ralph, I think that's definitely a possibility. I haven't read anything about that, but I think it's certainly a possibility. We're going to head up to the north now and see if we can't find more tracks of Karula. And part of Big Cat Week, of course, was the safari bingo, and one of the safari bingo items that we had was a pineapple. A very strange thing to add, but you know, when your masters tell you to take a piece of fruit on game drive, that's what you do. Ex-Ranga, the pineapple was consumed the day after our third prime time show, and I'm not sure that it will ever make another appearance on game drive. So thanks for that, X-Ranger. Let's head across to Scott. He's got a, well, he's got something tall to show you. A little tall something. See you just now.
Very good, welcome back. We have found some of the taller members of Juma and Arathusa, and we're just trying to get you into a good spot to enjoy a view of them. Which I feel we shall get quite shortly. Here's Mom on the left, that you can see, and stop right now, and you can see Junior. It's not the smallest of giraffes, but it is a youngster, and they are incredibly cute. But unlike the wildebeest, I still haven't got a confirmed gestation period for the wildebeest. But what I can assure you is that wildebeest have got a far shorter gestation than giraffe, who have 15 months and therefore cannot plan according to the rainy seasons when they give birth. So I'm not sure exactly when this giraffe calf would have been born, but like I said, it is unlike animals like zebra, wildebeest, impala, who give birth around November and December every year. Oh, well, I got lucky, and my guesses with the wildebeest gestation periods were correct, and almost exactly between 240 and 270 days. So at least we can confirm that. I find it incredible how these relatively thin legs can hold up such a big body. Wonderful animals, the giraffes, with quite a complex anatomy. Metalium has just asked whether safari guides ever have the ability to be able to assist Mother Nature. I'm just going to try and reposition ever so slightly while I answer your question, Metalium. And by help, she means kind of helping with irrigation or planting trees or grass. And to be honest, Metalian, we have the wonderful situation that the less we do, the better for Mother Nature, as a general rule. And these ecosystems look after themselves far better than us as humans can ever hope to do so. And in the Kruger National Park, which is the greater national park that we are open to, we are a part of a massive transfrontier national park that is over 3 million hectares in size. And because this natural ecosystem is so large, the animals look after themselves and Mother Nature looks after themselves. So we have got very little reason to help or assist the animals in any way. And the best thing we can do is simply watch them and not interfere with their daily ongoings. So the only time that we will, or maybe not us personally, but park wardens will intervene with animals is if they've been injured by humans, like a car crash or something like that, an unforeseen human-related incident that's caused animals discomfort, or if the animals are endangered or under threat. Ah, well done, Veer. We spotted the youngster again, which we haven't had a good view of until now, so that's wonderful. So, Metalian, I guess just to finish off, there is very little or no obligations or roles for us outside of finding animals for people to enjoy viewing and then telling them as much as you can about them. And that's ideal, I think. The ideal system is one that we do not get involved in. Now, Cecilia in Maryland asks a very good question. A, do giraffes have vocal cords? And B, if they do, why don't they ever use them? Well, they can make noises, Cecilia, but I've only heard it on a few very random events. So they are essentially silent animals, but recent studies have shown that they hum, especially at night, and they're not sure what this humming means exactly. Let's try and reposition one more time here because we're not getting the best views. So they don't have any conclusive kind of theories as to what the humming is all about and what it exactly means, but it is possibly some form of communication between giraffes. But they are essentially one of the most silent animals out here. Roger's just come up with a great description of these animals, saying they are kind of happily awkward but incredibly graceful all at once. And you're right, they kind of don't know whether they're coming or going. And their very, very bizarre anatomy, which we are getting a unique view of now, certainly contributes to that. What's also interesting, and watch closely next time she walks, is that both of her left legs, her front and rear left legs, will move simultaneously with one another, as will her right legs once they get into a bit of a flow. So now's not a good example of that. But they're one of the only animals that will have both of their left legs or both of their right legs off the ground simultaneously without toppling over. Let's see if, there we go, So you're getting a better idea of what I'm talking about now. Hello to Pinky Swear in Michigan. And I mentioned earlier that I'm not too sure how old this calf is, but Pinky Swear would like to know how long would it hang around with its mother for? And for at least a year, but probably closer to 2 years, would be an average age that a young giraffe will spend with its mother. If it's a female, it could well build into a herd, a natal herd. If it's a male, it'll probably move off and join a few other males until he's big enough to compete for ladies, and then probably move alone, or again in a small bachelor herd. So no set rules for giraffe and their herd structures. We could very well be seeing a female like this with several other females and their calves, but in this case it's just the two of them. We've come into this area because apparently Brent and VM drove past here last night and they smelt, Jamie and VM drove past here last night and smelt something that smelt like it had died. So maybe there's a leopard with a kill, but we're not quite in that area just yet. We were on our way to try and sniff it out when we bumped into these giraffes. It's somewhere down there according to them, so that's some exciting prospects. I think we're going to get some great views of her feeding here. Look at this. Awesome. Look at her tongue. That was really cool to see that long tongue wrapping around these combretum leaves. Hello to Billy, and good question. Where is the father of this young giraffe and what is its roles and responsibilities? Billy, the roles and responsibilities of this young giraffe's father was simply to help create it. It has no further roles or obligations in parenting the young calf, and that's entirely up to mom. And that's the case with a lot of wild animals. the males will simply be involved in the process of mating and then disappear and may never actually ever see their progeny. This youngster looks like it's found something tasty to chew on, but it's doing so quite apprehensively, almost. Not like it's completely sold by the idea of leaves, and it probably much prefers milk. Look at how short the little black tail tuft is, and keep that in mind, that little mental image of the tail tuft, and we're going to compare it to Mom's now. She's on her way over to the calf. Look at that. Awesome. Still got a lot of growing to do, youngster. And Mom's tail is certainly more impressive than yours. Oh, is it bath time? Oh, and drink time. Look at how flexible that long neck is. What a crazy view we're getting here. Julia in Houston, thank you for using the correct terminology, saying bilateral movement for the terminology of moving both legs at the same time, and you would like to know whether they do it when they are running as well. And yes, they certainly do. They perform that same bilateral movement whilst walking and running. To see giraffe running, especially in an open plain, is one of my favorite things. It looks like a slow motion affair, but it certainly isn't. They can move at high speeds of around 30 miles an hour. There's some beautiful bird song this morning. Chagra's calling. The woodlands kingfishers are fairly quiet so far. Oh, well, breakfast's over just like that. Back to leaves. And hello to Sarah. Welcome on board Safari with us. It's great to have you along. And Sarah's interested to know, how do these giraffes defend themselves against predators? Well, they've got a great ability to be able to detect predators long before they're a threat, and they do that with their permanent vantage point being so tall. What can you see there? Are you just making sure that there's no vehicles coming before you cross the road? Are you scared of snakes? Have you seen a snake down there? No? Okay, just practicing safe road crossing. Very good. As I was saying though, Sarah, being so tall, they can often see predators long before they actually pose a threat to them. But their size is probably their biggest defense against predators. Because they are so large, leopard cannot feed on adult giraffe, but young giraffe, like the one we're looking at now, can be caught and killed more often than not by big male leopards, not so much the females. But even lions, the biggest of the African predators, have got a difficult business in taking down giraffe. They are so tall and big and strong, and with those big legs, those hooves can deliver very, very painful, if not potentially fatal blows as they kick out. So lion can be unceremoniously hoofed off a giraffe if they are not careful. So those, I guess, are the main defense mechanisms. Some of you may remember a picture that was circulating of the Anderson male leopard, and he had a young giraffe up a tree. Something I've never seen before, but it is something that can happen out here. Okay, probably, oh no, the young calf's just disappeared behind a bush again. But let's give it a moment or two. It may continue across here to join Mom. And I've got a funny feeling, and I'm hoping I'm right, that it may run, and then we'll get to see it running. Let me just get the vehicle positioned correctly for this. I'm hoping the young calf is going to provide Julia and Houston with some bilateral running. And it's got such very little ossicones, those horn-like structures on its head. Come on, give us a run. But you can see the bilateral movement now very clearly, everyone. Look at this. Almost like a soldier marching, left, right, left, right. There we go. Come on, please run for us. Run across the road. Be more daring than your mother, who stopped and made extra sure that there was nothing crossing. No? Okay, well, sorry, Julia and Houston, you didn't get to see it running, but at least you got to see it walking through an open clearing. And thank you for bringing up the topic of hyenas and them moving bilaterally, and that they also have a bilateral movement when they're moving slowly, but not so much when they're running, and they've got a kind of cantering lope, or a strange kind of lope that they will perform when they are running. That's not quite bilateral. And I guess what's also interesting about hyenas is how they've got their kind of sloping hind quarters with regards to their front quarters, or comparison to their front quarters, which are used to house the large lungs and hearts, the stamina equipment that allows hyena to move such huge distances. They're specially designed for. In search of the smell, but Vim, who's on camera with me, has just spotted one of the smallest antelopes in this area, the steenbuck. It's probably only knee-high. That's a female, and you may have got a glimpse of another one, which was the male. You can see through that little gap in the bushes there, she's got no horns. The male, who is her husband, they form monogamous bonds. Oh, he's also hidden there in the bush. Well done, Vim. You may be able to see some pencil-sharp horns poking out of his head. And off they go. Oh, the giraffe needs to teach you a thing or two about crossing roads. Little steenbuck, that was very reckless. I mean, didn't even look once, not even one side. Hello to Molly. And Molly's interested to know which kind of giraffe do we see here in South Africa, and we only see the southern giraffe. There are about 9 different subspecies of giraffe through Africa, but we only get one that occurs naturally in South Africa. Further up in Kenya and Tanzania, where I've spent some time in my life, you get the Rothschild's giraffe, the reticulated giraffe, the Maasai giraffe, 3 different giraffe in quite a small area. My favorite giraffe being the reticulated, and what I'll do is I'll very quickly get my book out for you, Molly, and show you some pictures of the different giraffe. Now, do I take a gamble and just page through like I'm doing now until I get to the index, I think, where I can check properly. This is the best option, Molly. Giraffe, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 96. Very good. Ah, and isn't it wonderful that the reticulated giraffe, my favorite, is the first one, the first specimen that you can see on the top left. And you can see how each individual block or pattern is very distinct. The marking between brown and white is a very clear line, whereas the Maasai or Kenyan giraffe is more similar to our giraffe, the southern giraffe, but its pieces are kind of more flaky, you could say, in a way, more individual segments or shards of brown. Now if we go down, you'll see what I mean. The southern giraffe, the one we get over here, has got more regular kind of block shapes. The Rothschild's giraffe has got very white legs and is probably the most endangered of all the giraffe. Great, well there's at least 4 different types. There's also no other pictures of the other variables that you get here, just of a few youngsters. But there we go, Molly. The southern giraffe is the one we get here. But my favorite is the reticulated, which you get up in central Kenya, central and northern Kenya. Good morning to Mike in Florida, and really well done on your bird list. 187 specimens so far. Mike, please do me a favor and let me know what we can try and find you, what's missing off your list. And if we don't have any luck tracking down predators today, we might be able to find a rare bird. Was Wattled Starling not on already on your list, Mike? Because we got that earlier this morning. I'm not sure when you jumped on board with us, but we did get Wattled Starling earlier. Okay, well, VM and I are going to be doing our best to sniff out whatever it was that smelt fishy in this area last night. And we're going to send you back to James for quick updates on how he's doing.
Right, well, we have failed to find Karula at this stage, but we're still searching with great enthusiasm at the road to see if we can find any tracks. We did find a couple of buffalo bulls who looked at us with disdain, so we moved on from them while you were looking at the little giraffe. Now, I'm told that Mike in Florida, you have a bird list of 186, which I think, given that you live in Florida, is an immensely impressive list. And 187, sorry, I do apologize. I think that we should have a small competition amongst the viewers. Mike's at 187. Is there anybody who has a larger bird list than that? It'd be lovely to know. Hashtag Safari Live, questions at WildEarth.tv. Tell us what your bird list is if you happen to be ornithologically inclined. I know that many will not be, but I know that there are a few of you that keep wonderful lists of birds. There's a lovely bird I've just heard called the black-headed oriole, of course, which many of you will have seen. But I think one of the most beautiful birds at this time of the year is called the European golden oriole, and it's an amazing bright yellow color with black wings. Very seldom see them other than when they are running, at least flying. I said running because I've just seen a duiker flying across the sky. There is a duiker. Hello, duiker. Don't run away. There we go. This is our second smallest antelope here. The smallest, of course, being the Steenbok. This one's about 17 kilograms. And 17 times 2.2 is much too difficult for me to do at this time of the year, time of the day. Steenbok about 11 kilograms. That times 2.2 is at 28 pounds. Hello, Debbie. You are ornithologically minded. You want to know if there are ostriches around. I've never seen one here. Brian, you haven't seen one here, but you have seen one once. So Brian's seen one once in this area. So definitely, I mean, I've seen them in a similar area to this once or twice. It's not quite open enough. They do like open areas where they can see and they can use their incredible speed to get away from potential predators. They will fall prey to lions and hyenas and sometimes to leopards. But you definitely get them in the Kruger Park, Debbie. Try and add Mike's list. Oh, and Mike, anybody else who's ornithologically minded, and Mike, if you want, let us know what specific species you think you might be missing from your list, and we'll endeavor to find them for you. And also let us know if you are prepared to take the call, or if you have to actually see it to get it. Every so often you will see us rushing headlong down a road, seemingly out of control, and that is indeed because we are out of control. Brent Leo Smith managed to detach the brake line on Wendy yesterday evening, and so we're running without brakes today. Dean in Los Angeles, if we do lose signal, we'll come back to you now, but wonderful. You say you want to get a close-up of a wattled starling. You say you've got over 100, or that would be your 100th Safari Live bird picture. That's wonderful, Dean. We'll definitely try that. So I think you are going to lose us. We're on our way to Bivelshoek Dam to see what's going on there. But if you do use the other side. Such a muggy day. All right, let's go across to Scott, see what he's got for you. I'll see you the other side of this black hole.
Welcome back, and sadly James is evidently in a bad signal area, which happens from time to time. Whilst on these live safaris, you get to see all the glitches as well as the glory in between. I want to turn off this radio quickly. That was going to be providing us with updates from Arathusa, but all I heard were a few crackles. Might head across there a bit later, but would like to continue checking Juma before we do go across to Arathusa. And here we have a bachelor herd of impala, all different shapes and sizes, some young males from last year, and a few big, old, established males. This is a good example of how the males have got very little, very little need or requirements when it comes to parenting. I got this Billy's question from earlier, and you can see they're all just on holiday now. You've been left behind, buddy. Oh, no you haven't. You're about to catch up. Good decision. You don't want to be left alone out here, and the more eyes and ears you have around you, the safer your life becomes. Okay, now I fear we also may lose signal shortly, because we are also going through a bit of a low signal area. But let's hold going. It's really interesting, the technical side of what goes on here. I know very little about it, but what I do know is that signal fluctuates on a daily basis. And the vehicle that James is in had great signal just a few days ago, and then all of a sudden yesterday it started playing up again. So they need permanent care and nurturing. Mary in Michigan, good morning, and very happy to hear you are interested to know about the walking safaris and whether or not we will still be doing them even though Big Cat Week is finished. And yes, Mary, we certainly will be. We all love doing the bushwalks. Jamie also needs to get involved there. She's fully qualified, and we just haven't found a space for her to do much bushwalks yet. So that's something for you all to look forward to, is to be spending some time on foot with her, along with the rest of us on foot. So yes, we certainly will, but how exactly and when exactly, we're not too sure. Obviously, we ramp up our crew quite drastically for the Big Cat Weeks, and Now we will have, from there being in excess of 30 people in the camp for Big Cat Week, we are down to Liam and myself on this vehicle, James and Brian on the other vehicle, Kirsty and Nikki in the final control room. That is a total of 6 of us here making Safari Live happen. So because the numbers have decreased by 5 times, we are... Oh, there's Brent and Jamie as well. Whoops, my bad, I forgot about them. Sorry, Brent and Jamie. It's not because I don't love them dearly and think they are wonderful additions to our crew. So there's 8 of us here. Either way, it's a lot less people, and we are not too sure of the exact plans for how we're going to get you all the great views that you were experiencing in Big Cat Week. Not only are we going to want to be doing the bushwalks, but also the drone and get you up into the sky for some beautiful scenic views. And also just make sure all that equipment and all of our skills are still honed in those various departments. We will be doing it as often as we can. Okay, well, this long road that we are heading down now will eventually take us into the area of the Buffelshoek waterhole, but thankfully you will not have to travel down this road with us, which would take about 15 minutes to get to the waterhole, because James is already waiting there for you.
Well, this is quite a sad thing to see, really, and the first time in 20 years, Buffelshoek Dam looks like it's going to dry out. I just cannot believe that all that water has disappeared. You can see there are 3 hippo lying in the mud there. How they are tolerating the immense stench of rotting fish from where they're sitting, mixed in, of course, with their dung and the dung of 1,000 buffalo is anyone's guess. It really is very, well, kind of, not sad, but it's amazing. We've obviously had a very dry year this year, but I think last year's very dry year undoubtedly contributed to the fact that the water table is very low. And that's why this once large water body, once large and proud water body, is now, well, just what it is now, a sort of cesspit of dying fish. Still, that's perfectly normal. There is the Undertaker, Marabou Stork, but the rest of his kin have taken off and gone elsewhere because it's so denuded. I think all those tilapia that died have been eaten by various things. But it really is quite something. Anyway, while we're sitting there here, James Bear in Kansas City, you have a WildEarth or Safari Live bird list of 218. That is really impressive. I mean, I don't believe that the consistent bird list for this area is too much more than that 250, so you've done really well there. Let us know which ones you'd like to see from here. We'll try and find some common ones. Brian, how would you describe the smell of this general vicinity?
The tide has come in. The
tide has come in, yes, and rotted. It's rotted quietly, yeah. I'm just going to contact Scott on the radio. He's trying to get hold of me. Go ahead, Scott. Just to Mvubu Road. Copy that, good luck. Scott's just telling me what his route is going to be. He's going to head across to Arathusa, which is our western section of traversing. Wendy at the moment is not in a fit state to go there. You can hear some arrow-marked babblers calling. Oh, Edward, you've got some work to do. You were on 117. And rather, you're in Tucson on 198 bird species. I think that's brilliant. I think anybody who's keeping lists, I think that's just wonderful. Well, rather, we'll try and get you to 200 before the end of the year. I'm assuming you all have the marabou stork and the red-billed buffalo weaver that is calling above us. Tip, tip, tip. Oh, Alan, you're only on 148. And birds that you've seen on a safari live, that's still pretty good, I think. I mean, we don't generally concentrate a huge amount on birds, so I think it's very impressive. I think 218 is a quite astonishing number. I think 198 is also very good. Right, so let's move gently along, and we'll see what birds we can find. And then, on the subject of birds, certainly around here, there was a paradise flycatcher, and Chris Rowe, you say, did we ever get it? I'm not sure what you mean by get it, but yes, they are around here, definitely, and you could certainly include it if, I'm not sure if you were on the drive, but it's certainly been seen around on drive. I think I've seen it once. They're not common here, Chris. Certainly they have. I have seen them here at Wickelson. Paradise flycatcher, everybody, is a beautiful sort of chestnut-coloured bird with a blue eye and a long chestnut tail. The male's got. Oh, tracks of hyenas. And a question from Rich King. Rich, you want to know if ostriches stick their heads in the sand? Rich, that apparently is a legend. They don't. I've certainly never seen them do it, and I've read that is not in fact the case. I think what you'll probably find is that they do. They feed very close to the ground, and perhaps sometimes when they're digging for roots, they're herbivores. Maybe it looks like they've buried their heads in the sand. No, they are not head buriers by default, no. Nice one, Rich. Now, around the Bivelshoek Dam, not the Bivelshoek Dam, the Djuma Dam, the Vuyatela, little pan there is a hippopotamus. And Ava, you want to know if that hippopotamus ever gets out of the water? Yes, he does. At night time, we saw him the other night. He was making a frightful noise. There was a lady in town, a young female hippo, and he was doing the following at her. He was going... She didn't think that was a very nice song, and so she left. But certainly he was out of the water, and he will be out of the water eating grass at night. And I mean, a couple of people have said to me they think he's on his way out, like he might be going to join his maker fairly soon. I think he looks in pretty good nick, to be honest. I don't, he's got one or two injuries, but I don't think he's looking too skinny. But maybe he's not in great nick. I think he's okay though. So he will come out, Ava, and eat at night, and then as soon as the heat starts to build, or as soon as it looks like it's going to get light, he nips back into his pond and makes sure that no other hippo will come and take it from him. And we were looking at the other hippo there, lying in what looked like a sort of cesspit of mud, which is indeed what it was. Lucy in South Bend, Indiana. Right. We're just going to stop here and listen for a couple of birds. Lucy, you want to know if those hippo could ever get stuck in that mud. Hippo, very unlikely, Lucy, because they're so used to the water. They know what's going on in water, and so it's highly unlikely that they would get stuck. But certainly elephants will get stuck sometimes, young elephants, and some other buffalo maybe, and possibly even young antelope. It's normally inexperienced animals that get stuck in mud like that. But that place there will certainly be something that they will be very careful of. Elephant herds coming through their mothers will be very careful of letting their calves go anywhere near that particular area. Just trying to hear if we've got anything unusual. There is actually a bird calling. It's called a netiki. So that's a netiki. So from a ridiculously tiny little brown bird with a fairly pretty call, let's head across to Scott, who is not a bird at all, but a man. A fine example thereof, and some elephants with him. We'll carry on this way.
Now, we've just caught a glimpse of this young calf. It seems to be moving quite quickly after its mother, and they're moving down into a very thick riverbed where it is inaccessible with the vehicle, sadly. So I fear these may be the last fleeting glimpses of this young elephant calf. Now, I know you guys have been chatting a lot with James about birds. What I forgot to mention, and this is going to make some of the ornithologists very jealous, is that I saw an incredibly beautiful bird the other day, and it is one of the waxbills. It's called a violet-eared waxbill, and it is such an impressive bird that I'm going to get it out in my book and show it to you. They're not very common in this area, so that was a very cool one to see, and hopefully it won't take us too long before we find one to show you now. Because the alias disappeared, we're going to probably leave it to its own devices and show you. This entire page of birds is actually remarkable. They're all very small birds, though. So, VM, you can start any corner you like, and I'll go through them. The common waxbill is probably the least impressive of all of them, but remember, they are such small birds that unless you get binoculars onto them, you often don't realize their beautiful colorations. This is the violet-eared waxbill. How awesome is that bird? And then as VM goes down, you'll see the blue waxbills. These are fairly common, but again, easily overlooked because of their tiny size. And then look at how awesome the pink-throated twin spot is, along with the green-winged pytilia below that. I mean, some really impressive birds, all of which occur here in the Greater Kruger National Park. But the violet-eared waxbill, I'm sure, is one that a lot of you would like to add to your list, and we will be trying our best to do so, to find that for you. It was around Impala Plains, so whenever any of us are driving around Impala Plains and the power lines, to remind us or urge us to look for those little waxbills. Oh, did you hear some crackles on the radio? It sounded like possibly there's some action going on across that Arethusa. So we have now diverted. We are no longer heading east towards the Buffelshoek Waterhole general area that we were heading in, and we are now heading south and eventually west back towards Arethusa. From Siberia Zumi, one of the people who controls the waterhole camera. For those of you who do not know what a Zumi is, we've got a live camera, and the Zumis have the joy of being able to control where that camera looks. Now, Siberia says that I don't remember us seeing a cormorant, which is a water bird, and maybe that's just because of the low water at the moment. And we did see them at Buffelshoek Waterhole. We used to see some white-breasted cormorants over there, so I know for certain we have got them on camera in the year that I've been here, but they're not hugely common in this area. And you'll probably find now that it is very dry, they are frequenting the Sand River and the Sabi River, which flow through this reserve, or at bigger water sources elsewhere. But you're right, Siberia, we haven't seen a cormorant for quite some time, but we have definitely seen them before. The white-breasted cormorant. is one we've seen. You'll also get the reed cormorant here, which is a lot smaller. So wonderful hearing a lot of new names coming through. And oh, this is a bird's eye view on an Inyala. Big bull. Look at his little ivory tips there on the tops of his horns. Signs of a big male. Now, I'm not too sure what's going on with his nostrils, but it appears like he's taking a few deep breaths of the fresh morning air as he chews the cud. Hello, old man. As I was saying there, we're getting questions through from a lot of new names and faces, so good to have some new people on Safari with us. The next one is from Monkey Man. And Monkey Man would like to know, what storks do we get here? We get a host of different storks, Monkey Man. The pair of saddle-billed storks that used to spend a lot of time at this dried up waterhole sadly aren't here anymore. Very pretty storks. Those are here throughout the year, along with the marabou stork and the woolly-necked storks. But we also get some storks that migrate. The white stork or European stork come from Mediterranean Europe to come for our summer. We haven't seen any of those yet. What other storks am I forgetting about? The marabou stork's another monster of a stork. So the marabou, the woolly-necks, the abdons, the yellow-billed, probably about 6 or 7 different stork species that we get out here. To Margaret in Kansas, and you've just reminded me of a spectacular bird that we sadly do not get here, the superb starling. But you do get them up in East Africa. That's where I've seen the majority of my superb starlings. Some tiny little impala lambs here, and just like the wildebeest calves we saw earlier, they pronk and run around so joyfully. It's such a pleasure to watch them bounding through the bush, always keeping very close to their mother's sides. Look at their little tails wagging. And it's a wonderful time of year to be exploring with you guys, with all the new growth and babies around. Even though we're in a drought, it's still a wonderful time of the year, and there's a lot of life and joy to be seen and shared. But these impala mothers have done the right thing and moved away from any potential threats, taking utmost care of their little lambs. And because they have disappeared, we are going to send you across back to James.
Right. We had a hornbill, but unfortunately the hornbill flew away. But I'm sure those of you who are keeping your bird lists, probably yellow-billed hornbill was the first bird on your list. We haven't seen anything else of great note bird-wise, or indeed mammal-wise, or indeed anything-wise since we last saw you. We're heading now down to the south of the reserve along the eastern fringes. We're not quite on the eastern boundary. That's just about sort of 200 or 100 meters to the left of your screen, to the eastern side of us. That's 3 330 feet. You're still working with feet. Ah, there is a Nyala bull. Nyala, do not run away. No, no. Let's go a little bit forward. Big bird behind there. It's flown thick bush. There is a Nyala bull. Isn't he lovely? Magnificent animal. And very different from the females, the only antelope that show this incredible sexual dimorphism. Remember, we saw the Nyala cows earlier on, sort of chestnut colored, and this bull is, well, just grey and dark and charcoal, really. They're certainly my favorite antelope out here. He clearly doesn't want to see you as much as you want to see him. Oh, it's probably me, actually. Very strange weather this is. No sort of change in temperature. Thick, heavy cloud. There he is. Browsing away, and the bulls will live on their own, but sometimes they live with sort of in proximity to a nursery herd, and I wonder if there isn't another little group of females and the youngsters around here. Very kind of odd arrangement of hair. I mean, to have that much hair in a climate like this is really not a particularly clever idea, and I think they probably have to spend quite a lot of time living in thick bush to maintain any kind of coolth in their body temperatures. Hello, Anthony Delgato. I'm not sure I've heard from you before. Anthony, you ask a very valid question, and one that we need to address relatively often, because especially to people who are new to this kind of thing, the fact that we are driving around elephants and... What's wrong, Brian? Brian's being attacked by a horsefly. Don't worry, if you hear a scream, it's because it's bitten his finger off. Anthony, you want to know about the danger associated with being here. You've probably seen us sitting in close proximity to lions and leopards and elephants, buffalo, that hippo. You want to know if the animals ever get aggressive with us. I don't think that it's fair to term any animal aggressive out here. I'd go so far as to say that I don't think it's fair to call any animal even dangerous out here. Animals become aggressive, they become dangerous when they are threatened. We, as the apex predator, the animals see us as the apex predator, they are afraid of us. If we corner an animal, then they will react in an aggressive manner in exactly the same way as if you were cornered by a gangster, say, you might, instead of running away, you will then eventually turn around and have to fight. So it's very much a case of trying to understand how the animals see us, and once you do that, they actually react normally in a predictable fashion. Yes, of course, there can be an incident where you step around the bush and there's a buffalo asleep and he gets a fright and he'll bash you. It's very few and far between, and I'd say it's far less dangerous living here than it is in, say, a big city. That's not to say that we aren't extremely respectful, extremely careful around the animals. We watch their behavior very carefully. But Anthony, in terms of aggression, an animal only ever becomes aggressive if it's feeling threatened. And it's the way you sort of steer clear of that is to understand what might make an animal feel threatened, what might make an animal react in an aggressive fashion. Good question. Thank you, Anthony. brilliant idea and question from Miriam about electric Land Rovers, and you say, wouldn't it be a good idea? Yes, you say, is it possible that because it's so quiet, the animals wouldn't hear it coming and it would give them a fright? There's an element of that, Miriam, but I don't think a huge one. I think they would hear our voices, and certainly when we're on foot, sometimes we try and be quiet, and sometimes we will let the animals know that we're there by clicking or just making the odd sound. And I think we do the same thing in an electric Land Rover. The reserve I used to work on had one electric Land Rover. At the moment, I'm not convinced that the technology is that effective. It's, you need a lot of power to operate a machine like this and to do some of the stuff that we do. The electric Land Rover where I used to work burst into flames one day, which of course is not a really great thing if you're trying to give six people a safari experience. It's generally accepted that you want your car to stay out of flames. No one was hurt in the incident. And so the technology, I don't believe, exists just yet. I'm sure it's very close. But you need quite a lot of torque, quite a lot of power. And certainly I think that the number of battery cells that you need to operate a vehicle like this would be too many at the moment. But Miriam, that's definitely the direction in which we'd be heading. If there was an electric Land Rover that was completely silent, that's absolutely what we'd use. It always amazes me, you turn the engine off, and then suddenly the incredible sounds of the bush come out. And I'm no doubt that we do miss the odd bird that's alarm calling at a predator, possibly the impala alarm calling in the distance, or kudu alarm calling in the distance. I'm sure we miss that quite a lot, simply because of the engines. And these engines are very quiet compared with a lot of the diesels that are used. But still, I think we do miss them. So Miriam, yeah, absolutely. If there was an electric option, we would most certainly use it. We're heading down now to the southeast, and we're going to head back towards the old hyena den, which I believe has become active again. But there were reports of it yesterday. I'm not convinced myself, so we're going to have a look there. Morning, Sleepy. We're talking about aggression and danger out here, and Sleepy, you want to know what the most intense experience I've ever had on a drive is? Those of you who've heard this before will have to bear with me, but I'll give a brief summary of it. We had a male leopard was being harassed by some wild dogs, Sleepy, and eventually he got so irritated that he left the wild dogs, and he actually vented his frustration out on my vehicle. And thankfully the tracker was in the back seat, but the leopard jumped onto the bonnet of the car. And I mean, there was nothing I could do. If he decided to jump into the vehicle, we had 6 guests and the tracker and me, there were 8 of us on the car. If that leopard had decided to get into the car, we would have been in very deep trouble. He was on the front of the vehicle, and he did it twice. He jumped on twice, so that was pretty terrifying. But it ended okay. And the dogs, of course, were trying to harass the leopard because he was walking past their den. We know that all the predators will kill the young of the other predators if they can. So the dogs were harassing him, and eventually we managed to get out of there. And we saw him that afternoon, and he was limping, and I think the dogs had a go at him. So sleepy, I wasn't very sleepy after that happened. We had a young male leopard in this area a few days ago. Ooh, now there is a large male waterbuck. Stop running away, waterbuck. There we go. He's a rather magnificent fellow. And just staying along with the same sort of theme, B. Keith, you want to know if predators ever see us as prey? No, they don't, not out here. Remember that humans evolved in Africa with the predators that we have here. And because of that, they have an inherent fear of us. They have an inherent terror of the human form, or our bipedal stance. And when they see us walking, they're afraid. They will only ever attack human beings if they either feel threatened or if they're very old and sick and desperate, and then they might attack human beings. Often if you hear of a leopard that's killed a person, well, I mean, not that it often happens, it happens very seldom, but often the leopard is sick or injured, and that's why it would attack a human being. And the same would go for lions. Yeah, I mean, you get incidents where it does happen, and certainly the thing with lions is and leopards, in fact, they will get very used to, once they have eaten a human being, there's people will say, oh, they get a taste for human flesh, as if they become man-eaters out of the choice because we taste better than anything else out here. I don't know what we taste like, but I do know that once a leopard or a lion has caught us, they realize very quickly that we are absolutely no threat at all on foot if we're not armed. And so certainly along the border of Mozambique during the civil war there were people coming to and from trying to escape the civil war, and I think a lot of people were eaten by lions, and certainly there were prides of lions that specialized in eating human beings. But that's very, very unusual. So normally, no, animals don't see us as prey. The same cannot be said for animals that haven't evolved with human beings, like, say, a polar bear. Polar bears will see just about anything as prey. They haven't evolved with us. They haven't evolved this sort of natural fear of us that the animals in Africa have. So, very nice question. Thank you, B. Keith. But no, generally, animals do not see us as prey, which is something of a relief, really, when you're driving around in an open Land Rover in the Kruger National Park. Very, very active termite mound here. Let's just see if we can't find some termites. You can see it's active because of the sort of discolored soil, if you like. That's fresh building going on. Let me just go and have a quick look there. They often come out on these cool days like this to build, and I can actually hear them going, sort of their alarm call that they make when they see a human. Thousands of them in here, and probably millions. And the amazing heat coming out of the bottom of the mound, metabolic heat. And I'm not going to try and pull one out. I've done that a bit. I've started to feel guilty about pulling termites out of their mounds. There are some soldiers, which I'll show you the sizes now, lots of workers, and they're all kind of warning each other that there's danger afoot, shaking their little heads together.
We can see those two. You can see those two.
Can you see them?
Mm-hmm.
So here, those are two soldiers. They've come out to check what's going on. They'll bite my stick. There we go. They might even bite my finger. It's normally quite sore. But the workers now will hide. The workers are totally defenseless. Their mouth parts are purely used for building and feeding each other and feeding the queen and feeding the larvae of the adults, at least the alates. And the alates, of course, are those flying termites that people call flying ants, which are not ants at all. But the soldiers have got modified mouth parts, and some of them are that big. Those were little ones there. Major soldiers are that big, and they will draw blood if they get hold of your finger, or indeed any other part of you. So that is the mound of the fungus-growing termite, Macrotermes natalensis. And I think that's a pretty big mound there. I think there are probably, I'd say at least 1 million termites in there, given that a termite queen can lay 20,000 eggs in one day. That is pretty impressive. So in 5 days, that's 100,000. In 50 days, that's 1 million termites. That's what you can produce a year. Clearly somebody who's watched documentaries before. Your name is Monkey Man. That's an interesting Twitter handle. Like I say, every day I'm astonished and entertained by the Twitter handles that people have. Monkey Man, you want to know what I see you. The duiker that kind of running away there. Well done, Brian. Brian's got her. She thought she could hide, but she can't. He can't, sorry. Male. Yeah, I'm doing exceptionally well at finding duiker. I'm a bit of a duiker specialist. Is that a little ewe? Or has it got horns, Brian? It has got horns. So a male. Now, Monkey Man, your question is what do termites taste like? Monkey Man, they taste like peanuts, actually. I'm not being facetious. They really do taste like peanuts. Look. Brian, look in front there. There are 2 francolins with 2 little babies. 3 little babies. How cute is that? They've just hatched. Oh, that's wonderful. There's a crested francolin. The little one's coming now. That is so sweet. Now, what you will notice about a bird like that is that they've just been born and they're only that big. Tiny little things. So what's that, about 2.5 inches? So even smaller. Yeah, about 2.5 inches long. And they're not born featherless, like so many of the birds that you've seen on TV and documentaries, which are born totally naked and blind, and they sit there and flap around and open their beaks begging. Any ground-dwelling bird's got to be what we call precocial. They've got to be able to move almost as soon as they're born, in the same way that an impala baby is, or a nyali youngster's able to move. They've got to be able to move because they don't have the safety of a nest in a tree. And a francolin nest and, say, a lapwing nest is just a kind of a scraping in the ground, and the eggs are defended by their incredible camouflage. And when they're born, they've got to be able to move very quickly. And those little things were, they were really tinkling across the road at an incredible speed. So that is the crested francolin. 3 more crested francolin to add to this list. Right, there's a Battalier eagle I can see. I'm just going to, I think the road goes right past the tree where he's sitting, waiting for a bit of heat so that he can soar. Now, Beth, we do get this question fairly often, and it's a difficult one to answer. You want to know how old the termite mound was. Beth, it's difficult to say, and I'll tell you why it's difficult to say. It's difficult because I think those mounds go dormant, and then they get recolonized every so often. So, very difficult to say how old it would be because there's no consistent rate at which they grow. I would say that mound, given its size, is well over 100 years old. The Battalier there. How's that, Brian? Is that right? Look at that beautiful bird. The scavenger. But most beautiful flyer that we get out here, I think. So if that isn't on your bird list, everybody, it should be. They're fairly common around here. But you can add the Battalier. only found in protected areas. They don't like disturbed sort of farmland areas. And you can see there his wings extending down beyond where his tail would be. It completely tails this bird as an adult. Helps them to fly very low, reduces the drag that they have. And that means that they can get to carcasses faster than, say, vultures and bigger scavengers. I know that there is a nest around here somewhere, so I don't think that this is an indicator that there's a kill around. But certainly if you see them with a tawny eagle around, you can be sure that something has met its demise somewhere nearby. Very peaceful. I'm just going to be quiet for 20 seconds and just get a sense of the peace of a morning like this. So that sort of sound that you can hear is very quiet, of course, because without the sun, the dawn chorus tends to be a lot more quiet than it would be otherwise. It goes from the giant summer symphony that we get in the morning to a bit of a little violin sonata or maybe a small chamber group of instruments. Very quiet, very peaceful, and the air is thick and quite heavy and quite sticky with this cloud overhead. All right, let us carry on. I'm just going to get hold of Scott quickly. Apparently he had some leopard tracks round about where we're going, so that's encouraging. Scott, do you copy? I think he's probably on Arathusa by now, but we will certainly find that. I have a vague idea of where the tracks were. Scott, I believe you had some tracks. Oh. Copy, thank you. Right, so there were tracks of a female leopard round about that old hyena den. Right, so we'll go and help Scott there. He's looking for the leopard there, and we'll go and give him a hand in that area. Looks like a female leopard, so quite possibly Karula. Right, in fact, let's go across to him, Scott, I mean, by him, and he'll tell us exactly the update, and we'll see you in that area just now.
Hello, and welcome back. I hope you didn't fear for your lives that you were being driven by a vehicle with no pilot. Okay, so there are no updates across on Arathusa. I've just spoken to the guys on the radio waves, and therefore not going to rush across there, and rather spend some time trying to understand where a female leopard has moved last night. We did have some of her tracks crossing Philemon's cut line, and they were heading in the direction of where we're going now, so we could get lucky. I'm guessing it's Karula's tracks, a female leopard that we know very well, just judging from the area that we found him in. Obviously we could be surprised by a female that is snooping around outside of her territory, in the territory of another female. In this case it's Karula. So that's why we cannot be certain that it's her, but in all likelihood, judging from the area, we know who we are looking for. Now finding her is going to be a lot more tricky than knowing who she is. But we can start by just looping around this block just to make sure there's no taxiways leaving the area, and then we can maybe start fine combing, taking a few walks around. Maybe we'll see a bird like a bataleur, a bird you've just seen with James, which can be a very good indicator for finding leopards with their kills, as bataleurs enjoy feeding on carrion. Some hyena tracks going up the road here that I just wanted to make sure. Happy to hear that some of you found my previous little stunt amusing. Oh, we are very far away, but I want to ask VM just to zoom through. There's a termite mound at kind of 1 o'clock, and I can see something on it. Maybe I'm dreaming. It's just some fresh mud that I believe James was showing you a little bit earlier, and the termites are busy doing some extensions to their homes. I thought it may be an interesting animal perched up on the top of that termite mound, a vantage point where animals very often like to place themselves. That's in and around an old hyena den where we were looking down to now. Interested to know what is the purpose of these termites here in the African ecosystem. I think that's what you were asking, and they are incredibly important with regards to this ecosystem. They recycle so much dead plant matter that I'm told they have got a bigger impact or bigger weight or biomass than all of the large herbivores combined in this area. So termites have got more biomass and therefore a bigger effect on the vegetation of this area than all of the mammals, all of the large animals that you can see around here, or herbivores that feed on the vegetation. So their role out here is pivotal in breaking down dead, unpalatable plants that have passed their sell-by date and that are no longer any good to the herbivores, and they recycle those nutrients back into the ecosystem. So they're incredibly important. And even though we don't see them very much, they do certainly have a massive impact. And I guess that's something that us as humans make the mistake of doing quite often, in that if we don't see something, we don't believe its significance or importance. So things that are small, therefore less often seen, or things that are simply like a termite living underground the majority of the time, can go unnoticed. But it's unwise of us to not take into consideration all the things going on around us that are maybe less bright and brilliant as some things we like to look at naturally. In South America. Is now interested to know a little bit more about the complexities within the termite mound, and are the workers and the soldiers born to the same female? And yes, they are. All of the different termites, the soldiers, the workers, and the reproductive elates are all born from the same queen, and that queen can lay about 30,000 eggs every day. How exactly she decides whether to give birth to a worker, a soldier, or a reproductive? That I don't know. So if anybody does know how on earth she manages to perform that, please share that with us. All I know though is that she is a very large egg-laying machine. There was a cuckoo that just flew off. They are very secretive birds, and I guess that's because of their shady existence. They're not very proud of what they do, laying their eggs in other birds' nests, but VM has found it. And this is a Jacobin's cuckoo. They parasitize weavers and starlings, I think. And by parasitize, they brood parasitize. This could be a new bird for some of you to add to your list. It's a migrant, and we don't get to lay eyes on them very often. As I was saying, it's going to be looking for a host bird's nest to lay its egg in, and then have a very easy role of not having to lift a feather whilst raising its own young. So, back to Mo Khan's question. Not too sure how she distinguishes between giving birth to the different members of her community, but obviously they have a way of doing that. And she's a big fat egg-laying machine. Her and the king live in a royal chamber. All they do is make love and I guess eat the room service that is delivered to them by the workers. As they bring in food, they will remove eggs from the royal chamber, take them to the nursery chamber, I guess. Highly, highly complex, and on average in any one of these mounds, these termite mounds, there will be about 2 million termites, I'm told. I'm not sure who worked that out, but somebody obviously had a lot of time on their hands and managed to count all the termites within a termite mound. And that is the figure they came up with. So now we're not too far from the last tracks of this leopardess. They were about directly in front of us as the crow flies, so the road veers to the left, but the tracks were heading kind of in this general direction. So anywhere here we could find this leopard, maybe snacking on a baby impala. It's the flavor of the month. Hello Jared, and good to have you on safari with us. Jared's interested to know what other African animals do I love that we may not get to see here in the Sabi Sands. Well, chimpanzees are one animal that I sadly haven't spent a lot of time with, but I have seen them in the wild in one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to, called the Mahali Mountains National Park in Tanzania. So chimpanzees are wonderful animals, obviously very closely related to us. And gorillas, one animal that I've never seen but I really would love to. So those are two wonderful African animals that we do not get here. And then, slight variances. You get yellow baboons in Kenya, which are very different to the chakma baboons here. You also get olive baboons up there. So you get slight species changes, just like the giraffe we were talking about earlier. Lots of different antelope in different parts of Africa. What else can I think of that I miss? I mean, the one place where I have spent a lot of time outside of South Africa, but still in Africa, is in Kenya and Tanzania, where I spent 2 years of my life. And I've got some wonderful animals over there. A lot of small antelope called dik-dik that you were talking to earlier with James about. What am I forgetting? What else are awesome animals that I can't really actually think of at the moment that we get to see but not necessarily here? Oh, here are the leopard tracks that I can show you. This is where we found them, and further up ahead, oh, they're not very easy to see, but if you go further up there, VM, you should be able to see. Out there they go. So you can see the little paw prints here with the little toe marks. Not very clearly, but that is a female leopard that's moved here. and shortly up ahead she veered off this road into the block up here. So we're going to keep looping around and hopefully find some sign of her. I might take a short walk in here, and while we do that and try and work out where she's gone, we shall send you back to James. See you later.
Well, we've come to Treehouse Dam, where there is absolutely no... Well, there is actually a little bit of water there, Brian. Look at that. But there are a whole lot of impala. There's a kudu. There was a warthog just now, and they've been eating some of the vegetation that's sprung up in the background. And in the water there, we've got little canaries. Yellow-fronted canaries. Aren't they sweet? It's actually the best canary sighting we've had here. I wonder, Mike, if you've got the canaries on your list. They're not uncommon here. They seldom sit for long enough for us to actually have a look at them. And some others in the tree. It's actually a very large flock of canaries. Look at them, listen to them singing. That's them going choo-choo-choo, choo-choo. Of course, most birds here are drowned out by the woodland kingfisher when it gets going. Very peaceful little scene here at what was Treehouse Dam and is now Treehouse Puddle. Beautiful. I've always loved those canaries, I must say. And there's a... Let's head on from here, see what else we can see. We're in the area where Scott is, so we'll help him. Now, we've got a question here coming in. We've had that tiny little bird, the canary, and off to the largest bird that we have here called the Corey Bustard and Kashmira, aka Lion Eyes. You want to know if we get Corey Bustards here. I suspect you'll find them once or twice. Brian, you haven't seen Corey Bustards here. They're definitely around, but I've never seen one at Juma. Again, they do prefer more open grassland areas where they can get at their prey, these sort of reptiles and rodents and possibly the odd snake. And this kind of vegetation where it's quite thick. It's difficult for them to take off, difficult for them to fly in an area like this. They need space, almost like an airplane needs a runway to take off. They can't just leap up into the air like so many of the other birds. Thank you, Kashmira. I wonder if you might be able to tell me, any of you out there, you fine ornithologists, what the smallest bird we get here is. Hashtag Safari Live or questions at WildEarth.tv. Tell us what you think the smallest bird we get here is. Now we're going into the area where Scott is. So we're going to give him some help. See if we can help him with the leopard tracks. I'm pretty sure they must be of Karula. So the little bird that I'm talking about is even smaller than a canary, smaller than a waxbill. Now, Rich King, many different canary species there are in the world, and you want to know if those are the same ones that are used by miners. Rich, as far as I'm aware, they are not the same canaries that were used by miners. I'm not sure which canaries were. And for those of you who wonder what on earth Rich is talking about, Rich, you must tell me if I've got the story right here. But the canary would sing. As soon as they stopped singing, it meant that there was a change in atmosphere, that the oxygen levels were dropping, and there was an explosion of some sort. And I think that's why they took the canaries down into the mines. I don't know that the yellow-eyed canary, or fronted canary, or yellow-fronted canaries they're now called, was ever part of that scheme, but I shall actually try and find out. That's very interesting. And from birds to vegetation, Gilly, I think you're in Milwaukee. You want to know if we have any celery stalks on Juma. We do, but they're in the fridge. They're not actually growing here, as far as I know. There's nothing very similar to celery that grows naturally out here. I see, and apparently a follow-up to Scott's talking about stalks as opposed to STALKs. Thank you, Gilly. I get it now. I wasn't prepared with the prior information, so I must thank Nikki Austin for throwing me under the bus a little bit there. Thank you. It would have been quite amusing, Gilly, if I'd been prepared for it. Thank you. That meant get out quickly if you happen to be a human being. Take your canary with you. Not a very canary in a coal mine. So we've got two guesses for our smallest bird area. Sleepy, let's just watch this hornbill here. Carrying something to a nest. But that nest is not anywhere near where we are. Well done, Brian. Let's just sit here. I'll just quickly go through the answers we had from Sleepy. Sleepy, you say maybe it's the smallest bird we get is a bronze mannequin, and in another guess that it might be one of the crombecs, and that's from Phoebe. No, chaps, I'm afraid not. No, not a waxbill, wee Siberia. Alex, it's not some kind of a finch. The waxbills are sort of finches. No. Shame, everyone. I've actually never seen them here, but they do occur here. They're so small, so microscopic, you could miss them. That hornbill is clearly not wanting to be giving up where his home is. Anna-Marie, it is not a sunbird. Ooh, this is the very first time that I've stumped our loyal viewers. No, Savannah, not a flycatcher. Very first time. I've never managed to do it before. Keep going. I'll keep you in suspense a little bit longer. Maggie M, no, not a firefinch. The waxbills and the firefinches and those canaries are all roughly the same sort of size. In the wrong family of birds entirely, everyone. So we're around about the area where Scott is, looking for those leopard tracks. Ah, Chris Rogue. You're almost there. You say, is it a tit? Yes, it is a tit. What kind of a tit? Push your head here, Brian. We're just going to check this hyena den. Apparently it was live yesterday, but that was from one of the landowners. Always convinced. There was a hyena here the other day, but whether that means that the den is back active again certainly wasn't when we came past on foot. Here we go, from Gale in Australia, a penduline tit, a grey penduline tit is the smallest bird we get here. Tiny little things, probably about the same size as those baby franklins we had. They live in little flocks, and they make the most amazing nest. They weave this sort of nest of cotton, looks like cotton. Oh, there's a zebra. This den is definitely not active if there is ever knocking about here, I don't think. Anyway, the cotton nest has got a very clever false entrance, so it looks like you can see the entrance to the nest. It's actually a blind entrance, and you have to unfold it in order to find the real entrance. It's so clever. There are some zebras. Right, well, as these zebras disappear off into the bushes, we'll go and quickly check this hyena den, which I don't think is active because we're right next to it here with the zebra. Let's head across to Scott. He's got an arachnid home to show you.
So this is an interesting spider we've just found. I'm not too sure exactly what it is, but it looks like a crab spider to me, or possibly a kite spider. So either a crab or a kite spider are my guesses. It's not easy to see it, but we have been doing our best to try and position the vehicle so you do have a good view. You can see a very big egg case just above it. And what we can't see is that I think it's feeding on something. There's one little leaf in front of its mouth parts. And I think it may be, you can see it moving something around there, and I think it's busy sucking the hemolymph, the bodily fluids, out of one of its kills. As I said, we have been trying to get ourselves into a better position to view it, but let's see if we can get all the way around onto the other side of this tree to get a better view. Hold on. This will take a while. This looks a bit better. Ah, much better. So mainly white and black. And now you can see more clearly that it is certainly feeding on something. It's been mummified, whatever it is, wrapped up in silk. And that's what most spiders will do with their prey. And I think it's just the mouth parts of the spider that are moving that mummified corpse. But hard to be certain of exactly what is going on here. It's also small. Is it busy wrapping up a beetle? No, I think it's busy feeding on it. So it's piercing its mouth parts into that prey. And that's what they'll do with the majority of their feeding. They won't actually be chewing through their prey. They'll be sucking out the bodily fluids. And that's why very often in spiders' webs, you'll just see skeletons of their prey remaining. Wonderful. Not just about the big things, the big predators, but also about the smaller ones along the way. And we are actually busy looking for a female leopard whose tracks headed off into this area. Go ahead, James, the Impala Whisperer. James, I have headed off into the block along that follows that Rebecca's drainage. You can maybe do Philemon's cut line all the way around up towards Ballinati's. You'll see the last tracks close to the old hyena den site, heading west along Philemon's cut line before they veer north off the road. James is also in this area. He called me Scott the Spider Hunter, and I therefore responded James the Impala Whisperer, for lack of better ideas. And we are now joining forces in the search for this leopard. Where could she be? I certainly don't know. What I'm hoping to find is a leopard with an impala kill up in a tree. That would make our lives easy and enjoyable for the rest of the safari. And like I said earlier this morning, at this time of the year, the main food source of leopards will be impala, and not any old impala, but usually very young impalas. They are the easiest prey at the moment. Sometimes leopards will get lucky and catch both an adult female and her young lamb. I guess unfortunate females will get caught whilst trying to give birth. They segregate themselves from the rest of the herd when they do give birth, the impalas. So they've got no eyes and ears to help them, just thick vegetation that can hopefully conceal their position. Well, hello to Steve, who's watching in France. And Steve is interested to know if we get sable antelope here on Djuma. And Steve, we used to, many years before I arrived here, watch your heads everyone, in bushes, but I've never seen a sable, not even once, in the Sabi Sands. Brent saw one not too far away from us in the Manyaleti, but no, they don't occur here anymore, but used to be very common here. And the reason why they used to occur here and don't anymore is because this area used to be very different to what it is now in terms of the amount of water that was available to the animals. And because there wasn't nearly as much water as there is now, it was an area that suited sable, who are not water dependent antelope and will travel as much as about 40 miles in order to drink, and they might do that maybe twice a week. And by living in dry areas, they live in areas where there are not high amounts or high densities of predators, and therefore over many, many years they have not been required to evolve to the degree of other antelope that are more readily escaping predators, and therefore due to the high amount of waterholes that were man-made and built in the Sabi Sands, it allowed for a lot of other antelope to move into this area, and therefore also put further pressure and bring further predators into this area. So an example of how us as humans can interfere with an ecosystem. I'm not blaming anyone, and I think we're very fortunate to be in this area, even though it has changed from what it used to be. It still is a wildlife haven, so we mustn't forget that, but we must be aware that our efforts to sometimes help animals by putting in waterholes can sometimes not help certain species. So just a good example of how trying to play Mother Nature does not necessarily always work out best for an ecosystem or for a specific species. You do still get sable in other parts of the Kruger, so that is the good news, but they are a rare antelope that we don't see very much of. Herbivore that we do not get here is the Thompson's gazelle. Alyssa was interested to know if we see the Thompson's gazelle here. Sadly not, and they were not abundant here many years ago, like the sable were. They have never occurred this far south. the Thompson's gazelle as well as the Grant's gazelle. Both occur further north up in Kenya and Tanzania. Both wonderful, wonderful animals. A kind of similar South African antelope to the Thompson's gazelle and the Grant's gazelle would be the springbuck. So that's a similar gazelle that we get in this area. I think I may have just heard a squirrel alarm calling. Give me a second. I think it's continuing to alarm call straight ahead of us here. Unless I'm losing my marbles. We may be in luck. This leopard could be just up ahead here. Come on. Now ideally we find the squirrel first. And the squirrel then is going to be looking down towards the leopard. I think it's a bird that's mimicking a squirrel. I think that's what's happened here. I think that's why I got confused. Yeah, it's a bird that's mimicking the initial parts of the squirrel's alarm call. False alarm. It's certainly not going to be the first false alarm you will experience with me. I get very excited at the prospects of an alarm call, and usually anything that sounds remotely like one gets me thinking that we're in luck. This example, no different to many others. So if you are a new safari goer, it is something I need to warn you about. I get easily excited. And sadly now there was no squirrel, but we are going to be sending you across to James, who is again also working this area, hoping to find this leopard.
Right, well, we're driving around this area where the leopard tracks are, but we found some impala, so let us appreciate them and see if anything shouts an alarm anywhere nearby. There we go. Lovely bachelor herd of impala. They're all friends now, come together, have no interest in being around the children and their mothers. They now want to sit in their little bachelor groups, shoot the breeze, talk about manly things. I'm not sure what those are in the case of the impala. Possibly who was at the waterhole last night. And the state of the drought, of course. I'm sure that's a subject of discussion in impala society. There's also a giraffe just in front of us, and I wonder if you can see it. Very cleverly hidden in the bushes. There she is. She's just browsing gently. We'll get a closer look at her now. Or she might just come and have a closer look at us. As I'm sure many of you know, giraffe are often very inquisitive, very curious, and they'll very often approach human beings, especially if you're on foot. They really do find us quite interesting. And it's a great thing to sit in a clearing and just wait for a giraffe to come closer and closer and closer. Let's go a little bit closer. I'm just going to get into a position here and we'll talk a little bit about the drought, mainly for the benefit of Annie in Chicago. And it's an important sort of comment that you've made, Annie. How's that, Brian? Annie, you say that you're a new viewer, which is wonderful. Thank you for giving us of your time and for interacting with us. You say you find the drought so sad. Annie, it can be. Certainly, I mean, it certainly hasn't got to the stage yet when animals are starting to drop dead. That might happen. Move a little bit further forward for us, Annie. But it's, you know, it's important that it does kind of, you know, the vegetation and the animals out here have evolved with the periods of drought and periods of flood. And if those don't happen anymore, then the entire ecology of the area changes. That's not necessarily a bad thing either. But the droughts do change the landscape. And, oh, there's another one. Another giraffe just in front of us. And that's okay. And yes, there will be die-off of animals, and that is very difficult to watch sometimes. But it's very important that we as human beings don't think too much about intervening. If animals in a big open system like this are provided with water and perhaps salt licks and extra food to help them survive, what happens is that the land gets completely overused. And so the grasses and the trees, they really suffer quite badly. And if the animal numbers don't suffer at the same time, when there is rain, you'll find that there's a massive overutilization of the vegetation that there is. And that's obviously very dangerous for the future. So while it's quite sad to think about the drought and to watch the drought unfolding, it is unfortunately something that we just have to deal with from an emotional point of view, and physically we won't do anything about it. Very fascinating question. These are two giraffe cows. Kathy, you want to know if this is the worst record on worst drought on record at Djuma? No, I don't think it is. I mean, we use the term drought here to mean that we haven't had the proper rain yet. I would say a drought would only be constituted once, if we got through this wet season and we had less than half of our normal rain, then I would say we were in a proper drought. Kathy, do I think this is going to become a more arid area? No, I don't. Look, there's no question that it's getting hotter, that the global warming is having an effect. I'm not sure that we know what effect that's going to have, though, yet. Certainly the eastern parts of the country are apparently going to get slightly wetter as a result of global warming, while the west will get a lot drier, which will definitely affect our ability to produce food. But out here, I think it'll be okay. So I think the worst drought on record here, certainly in my lifetime, was in the late 80s. And it's been pretty good since then. It's an interesting question. Brian, if we can have a look at the legs there. Jennifer, you want to know those black markings on the inner legs are all ticks. They are, aren't they, Brian? Mm-hmm. They are indeed all ticks. I think some of them are injuries from ticks, but yes, certainly lots of ticks. So the oxpeckers are not doing their jobs. And you'll notice there that they are areas that are difficult for the giraffe to get to. So just under the armpit, and probably an area where oxpeckers would find it difficult to get to, because of course if a giraffe is moving, that armpit area is going to be constantly sort of rubbed against. And then in the inner thigh, same story. Very clever observation there, Jennifer. There's another cow in front of us. She's eating a bit of leadwood tree. And then just following the line of discussion around the ticks and the parasites, Jerry on Prince Edward Island, do you want to know what effect those ticks are going to have? Jerry, it's difficult to say. Certainly not great for the giraffe to have a whole lot of ticks on them, but they have adapted sort of far more than we have, or the domestic animals have, to dealing with ticks and the diseases that they are vectors for. And so if they get totally inundated, yes, they will definitely probably feel a bit low for a while, but I think their immune systems are such that they are able to cope with most of the diseases the ticks keep, and the oxpeckers do clean the ticks off them. Remember, out here, and in any natural system, parasites, ticks constitute a very tiny fraction of the number of parasites that any animal has to deal with out here, and so they're constantly fighting a war with parasites internally and externally, as is your body. Wherever you are in the world, you are constantly fighting a running battle against parasites that want to kind of compromise your immune system. Ooh, what happened? Did you have a bad dream? I can't imagine what on earth made that giraffe leap like that. It was quite nice to see, wasn't it? Either stood on a thorn or, I don't know, gave herself a fright. And Mia, I think that giraffe's last action will answer your question for you. You want to know if it's true that they cannot jump. Now, giraffe can definitely jump. I don't think they're going to win the FEI show jumping championship anytime soon, but they can certainly jump a little bit. And any animal that is able to run is able to jump. So the only mammal that out here that cannot jump is an elephant. Hello, Mandy Olson. We're looking at the giraffe's head, and you want to know what they're called on those little protuberances are called. Mandy, you can just call them horns if you want to. The sort of more, I suppose, biologically correct term would be an ossicone, which basically just means a bony cone. I just call them horns most of the time, but ossicone is what you'd call them. Slightly different from horns in that the giraffe are born with those ossicones. They're not attached to the skull when they're born, though. They're kind of flat on the head, and it's rather amusing to see when they're born with these two little things flat on their heads, and then they stand up over the course of the first few days of life. Right, let us head along. We're going to continue going around this block. Scott is in the middle of it somewhere, apparently in a riverbed. I didn't realize there was a riverbed in there, so that's quite interesting. Let's go across to him and see what he can say.
Well, I've got some very good news for our ornithologists. Even though this kingfisher is far away, it will almost certainly be a new species for a lot of you. It is not the woodlands kingfisher. It is not the pied kingfisher. It is not the giant or the malachite. It is the grey-hooded kingfisher. And a lot of you have not laid eyes on this bird before. I'm almost certain of that. They're a migratory kingfisher that have only recently returned to this area where they will nest. And their nest is somewhere in this bank ahead of us. Now, Brent discovered that the nest is here somewhere. And Mike in Florida, I'm not sure if you've got the grey-hooded kingfisher on your list. I know that somebody sent through an email the other day, and the grey-hooded kingfisher was on the list of things to achieve. So I hope you watching, whoever sent that mail. And I'm just going to get a picture in the book. They're incredibly pretty kingfishers. And I'm going to try my technique that I used earlier of just paging through, and that seemed to work now, as opposed to going into the index. And here we go. Here it is. Very, very pretty. Got a chestnut belly that you can see there. And slightly smaller than the woodlands kingfisher, which is just below, another migrant that's just returned back. Similar-ish call. Also, but not the of the woodlands kingfisher. It's sitting up there. It will hopefully return to this nest shortly, one of these holes in the bank, and if it does, we'll be sure to call you for a closer look at it. But for now, we just need to be patient. It's still perched up on the same dead tree, too far away to get you guys a good view of it. So I don't think it's good enough to count as a tick on the list yet, because you can't work out exactly what it is from this distance. But that is up to your discretion, depending on how tough you have been on yourselves with regards to sightings of birds that you'll check off on the list. Okay, we need to get you across to James, who's got another wonderful bird for you.
Hello everybody, I'm afraid the bird that we're looking at is brilliantly coloured, but also brilliantly gone. There it is, right next bush behind there, but I can't actually see him anymore. So what we had there, I'm going to have to show you a picture, was a red-headed weaver. And the red-headed weaver during the summer months, at least winter months, is completely indistinct, totally sort of drab and boring, but it has the most astonishing red head now. And I will show you a picture of it because unfortunately we've lost it. But they do like to live around this area, so perhaps we'll be lucky again. There is the red-headed weaver, and it is literally that brilliant red color. It was an amazing flash as it went through the bushes. Beautiful. That's the lady on the right-hand side there with the yellow head. And that's what the male looks like in the summertime. In fact, even drabber than that. So he only gets that red-headed face when he's about to breed. Right. I believe Scott showed you a grey-hooded kingfisher, which is really special. It's even more special than the red-headed weaver. So I'm a bit jealous of that too. It's his third one this season. So I'm triply jealous of that. I haven't seen one this season. Not only is it a grey-hooded kingfisher, it seems that it's also a grey-hooded kingfisher's nest. Scott is an absolute nest master. How he finds them like he does, I just don't know. Extremely keen eye. Possibly something to do with his childhood in Natal, last bastion of the British Empire, where rogues have been known to flourish, and perhaps he was a nest robber as a child. One doesn't want to cast aspersions, but it's possible. Siberia Zumi, you wanted to know if those grey penduline tits fly in flocks. They do. They live in flocks. They're communal nesting birds, and they all live in that beautiful little basket. I wish we could find one. They're almost impossible to describe, and the intricacy with which they're woven is quite stunning. But they do live in little flocks, and all you see is these kind of they look like little dung balls flying quickly across the sky, and then they disappear. That's basically the only way you can identify them. Kid, ooh, beautiful bird there. We're having very ornithological day here. There. Wolf kiss, sorry, not wolf kid. Have you got in there, Brian? Flown off? No. Yeah, there it is. That is a crested bobet. Yeah. The wolf kiss. You want to know what the smallest bird that we get here is? That's the grey penduline tit, and the largest was the other bird we were discussing called the Cory bustard. Well, no, an ostrich is bigger. Although we do get them here every so often, but the Cory bustard would be the heaviest flying bird that we get here. And then you also want to know if we get hummingbirds. No, we don't. But the sort of evolutionary equivalent with the long bill sucking nectar out of plants is called a sunbird. Very similar bright colors. They're not quite as small as the hummingbird. So I think the bumblebee hummingbird is probably about that big. It's a tiny little thing like that. And our smallest sunbird is the collared sunbird, and probably about that size. It's almost twice, maybe 3 times the size of the hummingbird, of the bumblebee hummingbird. Now, in keeping with Brian and my brilliance today, we're going to show you a duiker. This will be the 5th diker that we've seen today. Well done, Brian.
I think it's actually the 6th.
Sixth diker. It goes. And Scott called me an Impala whisperer. I think he was incorrect. I am in fact a diker whisperer. There's something for the CV. Now somehow Brent Leo Smith, while driving on this car yesterday, has managed to snap a piece of metal in his seat, and it keeps catching on my shorts. So if I get up very quickly and suddenly I'm in my underpants, you'll know why. Let's go down to the old hyena den. Darren, lovely question. How many big predator birds do we get out here? What we would call raptors. Sorry, Jared, not Darren. I must have a word with Vicky Austin about her elocution at the moment. Jared, we get lots and lots of hawks and raptors and things. We get probably 10 eagle species. We get 5 vulture species. We probably get 6 or 7 what you would term hawks, 1 or 2 falcons. So yeah, lots and lots. I'll just quickly give you a list as we drive through here. We're hoping to find Karula. Like I say, Scott's in this block just to the south of us here. And so we get brown snake eagles, black-breasted snake eagles, marshall eagles, tawny eagles, fish eagles, Wahlberg's eagles, and I know that I'm just hoping desperately here for nothing, because I think that's just a piece of termite mound. It is just a piece of termite mound. Lesser spotted eagles and steppe eagles. What other eagles? That's probably most of the eagles. Battaliers, of course. The vultures are the whiteback vultures, the lappet-faced vultures, the white-headed vulture, the hooded vulture, and the cape vulture. And the hawks, we get the dark-chanting goshawk, gabar goshawk, African goshawk, little sparrowhawk, maybe even black sparrowhawks. And then we get amur falcons, western red-footed kestrels. Sometimes we're really lucky, a beautiful lanner falcon, maybe a peregrine falcon once or twice. So it gives you an idea of the amazing number of raptors that we have here. Kites, black-shouldered kites, yellow-billed kites. I'm sure I'm missing out a few as well. This is an old hyena den here. This will be the second old hyena den I visited today. I walked around this area extensively last night, looking for Karula, the Queen of Juma, and I did not come up with anything. I think she's probably coming into this area because there seem to be quite a lot of little herds of impala, which will have little babies with them. There don't seem to be anything in the way of leopards around here right now. That's where the hyenas used to live. Right, let's reverse out of here, Brian. Nothing going on. Thank you, Pam. I'm very appreciative of your assertion that all the way from Colorado, that were I to end up in my underpants, you wouldn't object. Pam, I think you're probably talking too soon. I think you may well object strongly if you saw the state of my underpants. Let's leave it at that, shall we? Yes. And I'm certainly thankfully covered up there. Many, of course, issue the use of such things. they are. Now, Jeffrey, you've asked me a question that I cannot answer. You're in Texas, and you want to know about why it is, or what mechanism is it that allows a bird to change its feather color. Jeffrey, it's definitely wired into the DNA, and I think it's caused by a change in day length. So the day length will change, and so as the season changes, so the bird will change its color. It's probably caused by also hormones. As the day length changes, so the testosterone levels in the little bird will increase, and so their feathers will change to their breeding color. They'll become a lot more aggressive. But in terms of, how it really happens, I don't know that I can tell you more than that, Jeffrey. Good question, thank you. Let me know if I haven't answered it, and if I haven't, I'll go and do a bit of research. Fascinating question from Wolf Kiss. You would say you want to know if we get any bears here. We don't get any bears here. You're quite correct. And then you say that there was something called an Atlas bear at one stage, and maybe it's extinct. I don't think it was ever found this far south. Now, the Atlas Mountains, of course, are north of the Sahara, and because of the Sahara Desert that really has separated one part of the continent from another. And many of the animals that were found north of that really have differentiated enormously from those that were found south. So perhaps there was a bear that lived in the Atlas Mountains. I don't know of it for sure, but that's fascinating. Thank you, Wolfkiss. And it would seem quite likely because, it's pretty close to Europe. Could easily have come across the Isthmus of Suez at some stage and evolved into different species. Hello, Kathy in Memphis, Tennessee. You want to know how we keep the monkeys and baboons away from our food stores here in camp. Kathy, it's pretty simple, really. We just close the doors. If we don't close the doors, though, you're absolutely correct. The monkeys will go in there and wreak complete havoc. They'll eat one bite out of every apple. They will steal your toiletries. They will eat your toothpaste. They will eat your malarial prophylactics. They will eat all sorts of things that they shouldn't. And they also have a partiality to booze. So baboons certainly do. And they'll pick up beer cans and they'll bite into the beer cans and sort of suck the beer out and then toss them away. Baboons are the worst. You don't want a baboon anywhere near somewhere where you might have to live. Because what they do is, once they've finished raiding, they kind of indiscriminately go to the loo. So they drop their evil-smelling dung all over the place. And there is very little, lion dung being the exception, that smells worse than baboon dung. And a room that has been raided by baboons smells like a sewer very quickly and takes a long time to get that stink out. I remember once I had a room that was raided by baboons. I was working at Londolozi to the south of us, and the baboons came in, spent 20 minutes rifling through my belongings and going to the toilet in every available corner. And somebody helped me clean the room up, zipped my bag up, put it on the cupboard, and 6 weeks later it came time for me to go and leave. And I took my bag down off the cupboard and I opened it up, and there, sitting in all its coiled glory, was a baboon turd, 6 weeks ripe, been sitting in my bag. It was an experience that I don't wish to repeat. Yes, I think you're probably correct. I don't know if you managed to see it, and I'm sure Brent will post a picture fairly soon. But Karula was blowing bubbles yesterday, spit bubbles. A very inelegant thing for a queen to be doing. Brent took a picture. I'm sure he'll post it a bit later, and I know some of you took some amazing screenshots of it. Let's head across to Scott. He'll give us an update on how his tracking is going. I hope better than mine. See you just now.
Well, sadly, my tracking has been no more successful than James, and still in the general area though, so there's still hope. Now, the grey-headed kingfisher, rather not hooded, did not come any closer to us. We gave it a few minutes and then moved off. Another interesting update regarding another pretty bird in this area, the lilac-breasted roller, and the nest that we were monitoring in a cavity in a marula tree. It appears that those chicks have already fledged. There's no sign of them, and there's actually a squirrel now living in their old home. So interesting how quickly the animals recycle or change tenants within the cavities, which are a scarce commodity out here. Because cavities in trees are a scarce commodity, I took it upon myself to make one, and I'm going to show it to you now. It's just about a minute or two up ahead, and sadly it hasn't got any takers yet. I'm not sure why, and it's to see whether the positioning that I've put it in is not the right one, and that's why maybe we haven't had any takers yet. So maybe merely all I need to do is change its location to a different tree, maybe higher up off the ground. Now the cavity that the squirrels have taken over from the lilac-breasted roller, I can just see that it's a squirrel's nest because of all the leaves that have been carried in there. They will carry leaves in from trees to make a bed. And the lilac-breasted roller didn't have leaves, they just had more kind of grassy materials to create a bed for the chicks. So no baby squirrels that I know of, sadly, and I couldn't see a squirrel in there. I just know from the material that it was a squirrel's new home. John Trotter, good to have you on board with us. And John would like to know if we ever do night drives. And yes, every evening we finish off with a spotlight. So join us on the Sunset Safari and we'll be doing a bit of a night drive. But to spend long hours out at night with our current equipment doesn't really make sense, John. We need night vision or infrared or thermal imaging, something that allows us to film without interfering on what's going on here. And oh, hang on. This is exciting. James has just been telling you about an animal that pooed in his bag, and I've just seen tracks of that very animal. So that's very exciting. We don't see baboons very often, and here are tracks of at least one individual, one lone baboon walking down the road. Now, not easy to see exactly what's what, but there's a pad and then the fingers in front. And what I'll try and do, let me jump out and show you a closer track here where I can show you exactly what's going on. So do you see this track here? Okay, so this is a right back foot. So this is the back foot. You can see the kind of sole of the foot, and then here's the thumb and the other fingers in front there. So right, back right, and this would be the front right over here, which is more hand-like. So those are a back foot and a front foot of the baboon. Not easy to see though. And then up ahead here we have the front left, which would be here if I was a baboon, and then back left foot over there. Good. Here we've got two other baboons, but they are in a vehicle, and they are clothed. And they're coming in the direction that baboon was heading in, but obviously they didn't bump into it either.
I believe that you have found tracks of the marauder.
Yes.
Yes, look at that. Thing.
Fascinating. Where is he hiding?
Where is he hiding and where is he going to the moon?
Well, he's heading towards Brent and Jamie, so maybe he's given them,
yes.
Maybe he's taking them breakfast in bed.
It'll be quite a breakfast if he has. Have you? I've never seen baboons here before.
I have very infrequently. I've seen a lone male in quarantine, so maybe it's the same one.
Oh.
But in February, there was a troop
Around here.
in the area that I sadly only got to see once or twice. Actually, with Brian, we had a wonderful sighting of blacksmith lapwings bombing them as they took
A
shelter.
raiding party.
Yeah,
Right. Okay, well, quite a quiet drive out here today.
it has. Shall I race you back for breakfast?
Yes, it's great.
See you later. So, always nice to actually bump into the other members of the Safari Live crew when we're out in the field. It doesn't happen very often. And it also gives you guys an opportunity to see what our vehicles look like, to see what the elusive cameramen look like. Hello to James in New York. James is interested to know if a highly venomous snake was to bite a lion or a leopard, would it potentially be fatal? And yes, it would be fatal, possibly. But the wild animals of this area are exceptionally strong and have the possibility of being able to survive snake bites. I've never ever seen a lion or a leopard be bitten by a snake, but I can tell you that a camp manager who does live in the Sabi Sands very recently lost a large dog to a snake bite. So a large dog, similar in size and kind of stature to a female leopard, therefore it kind of indicates that they certainly can become unlucky if the venomous snakes bite them. And there are certain snakes here, the black mamba, the boomslang, the puff adder, that are highly, highly venomous, and even the toughest of animals may be killed by them. So I think what they have in their favor, though, is their reactions and their senses are so much better than ours as humans that they're probably less inclined to be bitten by those snakes. Take a quick look up into a cavity in a tree here. It's a hoopoo nest. It's an African hoopoo nest. Sadly, the adults are quite shy and they don't come back to the nest if we wait here for them. But we know that something's going on in there. And I'm going to quickly race you off now to my homemade bird nest, which is just up ahead of us. So I've positioned it in an area where we would be able to monitor it very easily and not have to drive off-road and create a new set of tracks to a set tree. And that is why I chose the silver cluster leaf tree, which is directly in front of us. And you'll see I hardly have to leave the road in order to be able to inspect it. I can also then use the hood of the vehicle as a platform. And I'm hoping some woodlands kingfishers, two of them actually just took off from nearby, you'll hear them calling, are going to make their home in this cavity. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump onto the hood of the vehicle to be able to show you exactly how it all works here. So, there is a lid which you open like this, and we can then look inside using a flashlight, and there is nothing going on in here. So what I did was I cut this log in half down the middle and hollowed out a cavity in the center here. So there's a big hole all the way through, and then glued it back together. If you would like to watch the video, it is on my Facebook page, Scott Dyson Safaris. That would probably be the easiest way of understanding how I built this. But it hasn't had any takers yet, sadly. So not too sure if it's a bad position or what's going on, but nobody seems to like my handiwork. wildebeest, aka VM, who is with me on camera today, helped me with the fine-tuning of this device, which you will also see in the video. VM wielding a drill. He was pivotal in the hinge and the roof, the lid of that little nest box. Interesting stuff. James has found another nest and there's not much time left, so I'm going to say goodbye and thank you very much for joining us on Safari this morning. It's always great to have you, and well done to Nikki and Kirsty in the final control room. VM, thank you on camera, and over to James for the last few minutes.
Well, I know that I'm not much of a nest finder, everybody, but this one we have found. It's a grey hornbill's nest. We watched the bird fly in here. I actually spotted this a while back and didn't know if it was actually active, but you may just every so often see a little bit of movement in the slit there. And you can see the two little beaks of the two young hornbills. They've come away from the nest hole now. Let me make a little bit of an alarm call and see if they don't come out. Psh, 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 psh. Little embarrassing. So you can see a little bit of movement inside there. Perfect little slit for a hornbill to be in. Isn't that really cool? Our famous nest robber has said that this was a nest last year. Typical, of course, that the nest was already found. There might be another nest in here, you know. No, not in this tree. Those birds there that you can hear going quack, 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 are called kakalars, or green woodhoopers. And they're also carrying food. They're communal nesting birds. They also like to nest in tree holes. And I wonder if they don't have a nest in that dead marula tree that they're in now. It's carrying certainly some food. Let's just watch them carefully. It could be a hole. The other, he's feeding something there. Mm-hmm. There's a hole there.
Yeah.
Ha! 2 nests, Scott. Thank you for that. Scott has no, he still got it. No, I'm wrong. We'll keep watching for a little while. Genevieve in New York, Scott and I are not going to have a bird nest off contest because I would lose it very horribly, and I don't wish to flatten my ego in quite that way. So we'll just sit here for a little bit longer and see if those green woodhoopers don't have a nest there. In the meantime, I'm afraid we're going to send you off to have your breakfast or supper, or probably go to sleep if you're in the States. Thank you, Brian, for your efforts today.
Thank you, James.
Thank you to Kirsten and Nikki in the final control, to Scott and VM on the other vehicle, and of course a large shout out to Tara Dales, who, like I said, leaves us today, and I hope that she is happy wherever she fetches up at the end of her trip to Johannesburg. We'll see you this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Until then, stay safe and happy wherever you are in the world. Bye-bye.